Today is a great day to be a white-blue mage in the world of Magic the Gathering. Wizards of the Coast has just released the newest batch of Alchemy spoilers, and you might like them so much that they might unexpectedly convert you to a fan of Alchemy. Ha ha! Jokes.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The magic historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings! Owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends! I hope the day finds you well, because we have gathered to talk about a whole range of new Alchemy spoilers. Now, before we dive in, I do want to mention brand new lore video over on my lore channel, Magic the Gathering Brothers War Lore. First storyline in the game's history, and it's absolutely amazing. So, check it out, link at the end of the video. Now, diving into the cards, let's start out with Unexpected Conversion. This is a wild card. 1 blue and 2 for a sorcery that says draw 2 cards. Then you may exile an instant or sorcery from your hand. If you do, search your hand and library for any number of cards with the same name, exile them, then shuffle. Seek an instant or sorcery card for each Kyle. I exiled 5 Kyles today. Seek an instant or sorcery for each card exiled from your hand this way. So this is a very interesting concept. Straight off the bat, it's drawing 2 cards for 3 mana, which is bog standard for blue commons. But then you get to exile an instant or sorcery from your hand if you desire to do so. Then you get to go and look for any other copies of that are still in your deck and get rid of them too, and draw cards to replace them. So not only are you feeding more cards into your hand, but if you have a spell that is useless against the opponent you're playing with, you can get them completely into exile and replace them with other resources, which is really solid. And the artwork is absolutely amazing. You can see all of these different elements representing the different colors of magic. Some of them are very obvious. I mean, the green nature, blue water, fire, those are very clear. White coming in is this kind of solar radiance. And then even off on the far side, you do have black coming in as sort of a miasma. And you got these crazy magical coils that are blasting electrical energy that's kind of fusing and converting them together. Reality is warping around it. This is very cool. Moving on, we got a lot to talk about today. Angel of Eternal Dawn. This thing is insane. 1 white and 2 for a 2/4 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, it becomes day. It can't become night. Your opponents can't cast spells with mana value greater than the number of turns they have begun. So, this is the Angel of Eternal Dawn. It's like at first when you look at it, you're like, wait, it's nighttime. Why are you showing me an angel in nighttime? But look at its wings. The dawn is actually inside its wings. It's ensconced in the wings of this angel. It spreads its wings wide and daylight flows out of it. And as long as this angel is around, it literally can't become night. And then you just have people in Innistrad going crazy. I just want to sleep. Somebody turn the lights out. Like it comes with its own problems. But honestly, this is nuts. It makes it so that it can't become night. It's always daytime. And on top of that, your opponents can't cast spells with mana value greater than the number of turns they've begun. Only played 3 turns? Great. You can't cast nothing that costs more than 3. This is a cool little card. It really does, like, you think about that last ability and you're like, how much does that matter? Anybody who's playing mana acceleration, forget it. Were you trying to get out cards faster than normal? You're not going to get to. So this is really solid. Moving on, we've got Expedition Supplier. 1 white and 2 gets you a 2/2 human warrior. Whenever Expedition Supplier or another human enters the battlefield under your control, conjure a card named Utility Knife onto the battlefield. This ability triggers only once each turn. So, a utility knife is a piece of equipment that costs 1 to put out. When it comes into play, it automatically equips to a creature. It gives the creature +1/+1. And it can be equipped for 1 mana. So basically, every time this guy attacks, you create an artifact that gives a creature +1/+1 and attach it to a creature right away. That at first it kind of seems like whatever, but the fact that more and more of these are going to be generated, you can build your deck around having extra artifacts and they can be moved around afterwards, means that this guy will actually probably be a little more fearsome than he originally appears. There's just something about his artwork that makes it look to me like a dude throwing a fish. I know that there isn't a fish in the artwork, but there's something about his one leg, or it's a utility knife. It just, for some reason, it looks kind of like a fish to me. So it's like he's climbing down the side of a cliff and he's like, yo, have a fish, bro. You know what I mean? But he's just whipping knives around. It's like, we're all hanging from ropes from a cliffside. Why are you throwing blades around, bro? You're nuts. All right, moving on. We've got Faithful Disciple. 1 white and 1 gets you 2/2 vigilance. And when Faithful Disciple dies, draft a card from Faithful Disciple spellbook. Oh, I want to clarify. Yesterday, I said that when you draft, you actually get to pick from 15 cards. What happens is the game chooses 3 cards from the 15 cards spellbook, and then you choose one of those 3 cards. So you do have a choice, but you're only getting to see 20% of the options. The artwork is, pretty standard. You've got a priest there. He's got a orb of light that he's holding up while zombies are trying to come and get him, or I guess this is supposed to be his life ending, and he is casting his final spell with his remaining life energy, because even though he's about to be torn apart by zombies, he still has faith. Misplaced. Moving on. Divine Purge. This is an interesting one. 2 white and 1 for a sorcery. Exile all artifacts and creatures with mana value 3 or less. They perpetually gain. This spell costs 2 more to cast. And this permanent enters the battlefield tapped. And for as long as each of these remains exiled, its owners may play it. So essentially this works similarly to a number of white enchantments we've seen where it's like, remove something, but they can get it back. In this case, they just get it back by paying an increased cost for it. Very similar to the Elite Spellbinder card that was recently created. So this is a new ability for white where they can remove your stuff from the game, but only temporarily, and just increase the cost. So they can delay more than stop, right? In terms of the artwork, this definitely does look like a divine purge, right? Like this holy aura energy just blasts out in this crazy wave, and any beings of insufficient power, either evil or good, are just like, oh, you're all swept away into nothingness, right? Like this affects every player. This isn't just your opponent. So it's an interesting card. It doesn't stop the more expensive stuff, but if you have bigger creatures out, right, and you use this, then you can be like, okay, let's clear the way. And it can also obviously be used to get rid of artifacts. I feel like there's a lot of potential for this card. Moving on, we've got Angel of Unity. 1 white and 1 gets you a 1/3 flyer with lifelink. Whenever Angel of Unity enters the battlefield or you cast a party spell, choose a party creature card in your hand. It perpetually gets +1/+1. And a party card or spell is either a cleric, rogue, warrior, or wizard. I just love the wording. Whenever you cast a party spell, choose a party creature. What's up, bro? You're a party creature. So, the artwork depicts the Angel of Unity. It looks like she's actually enhancing everybody all at once. I have a very strong feeling that when it comes to the cards for Alchemy, Wizards just uses slush art. And if you're not familiar with slush art, basically, Wizards of the Coast commissions a ton of artwork. It doesn't all get used for its original purpose. But since it's all still good artwork, they don't throw it away. They just put it in a file until they can find a use for it. And then with things like this, they can just go, we don't need to have particular cards made for it. We can pull artwork out of the slush file, and as long as it's close enough, we can use it. And this feels like a close enough piece of artwork. You've got an angel, you've got creatures being enhanced. Sure, just say they're party creatures. Party! Moving on. We've got Slayer's Bounty. This one's cool. 1 white for a legendary artifact that counts as a clue. When it enters the battlefield, look at the creature cards in target opponent's hand. So this is already very weird, right? Normally, you just get to look at the entirety of your opponent's hand. But in this case, you get to look at just the creatures. And this is something that only Arena can do, because otherwise you have to trust your opponent. Show me all the creatures in your hand, but nothing else. And they could easily hide information, right? So, whenever you sacrifice Slayer's Bounty or another clue, draft a card from Slayer's Bounty spellbook. And 2 mana, sack Slayer's Bounty, draw a card. So this is pretty cool. It's like a bounty notice. And as you like gain your clues, you can get more magical powers. It doesn't fully tie together 100% like from a flavor perspective with the powers, but a lot of it ties together very well to the point where it really still does feel very flavorful, showing a little, like a literal sheet of paper that is a bounty. I like it. It's a funky idea. Moving on, we've got Sigardian Evangel. 1 white and 1 gets you a 3/1 human cleric that every time I look at it, I think it's an angel because of the wings that are spreading out, but that's because of a statue behind it. But totally, my brain just goes, angel, right? Anyways, when it enters the battlefield, conjure a card named Sigardian Evangel into your hand. Discard that card at the beginning of the next end step. When Sigardian Evangel enters the battlefield, tap target permanent you don't control. So this is interesting. It's like the more he evangelizes, the more others come to evangelize as well, I guess. So you've got to keep that momentum going. Each time you play him, you get another one in your hand, and he's only 2 mana. So you could theoretically cast a lot of these and just keep chaining them turn after turn, right? Because you've got basically no, never mind. Sorry, you have to do it all in the same turn because you don't get to keep them until your next turn. You get rid of them at the next end step. So you can chain them together to a degree. I guess it would be too powerful if it let you keep it until the next turn. Overall, an interesting card. You could do some funky stuff with it. The artwork's pretty straightforward. You literally have a cleric proselytizing to the crowds. Listen to my religious views, my friends. Moving on. We've got Suntail Squadron. I like this. Suntail Squadron is 2 white and 2 for an instant that says conjure a card named Suntail Hawk into your hand. If you have fewer than 7 cards in hand, repeat this process. So essentially, fill your hand to 7 with Suntail Hawks. If you already have some cards, it counts those as already being there. So if you have 2 cards, then it's going to give you 5 more. But Suntail Hawk is 1 white mana for a 1/1 flying hawk. So it's just like, boom, Hawk Squad! And you look at the artwork and you can see there's a ton of them flying around. I mean, the one in the front looks like he's giving birth to a drumstick. Or maybe a fish drumstick. I don't know. I'm seeing fish everywhere today. It's a weird card. Let's move on. Ethereal Escort. 1 white and 2 for a 3/3 lifelink. When Ethereal Escort enters the battlefield or attacks, choose a card in your hand. It perpetually gains lifelink. You'll notice it doesn't say creature card. So you could do this for sorceries, instants, artifacts, planeswalkers. You can give lifelink to things that wouldn't normally have lifelink, which is amazing. And the artwork is also great too. You've got these 2 soldiers who are out on their night watch. Actually, their armor looks great. And then you've got this spectral escort, the ethereal escort, who's walking along with them. And I love the contrast between the human knights who are fully regaled in sturdy armor with blades ready to go. And then you've got this spirit, which literally just looks like a lovely lady in a gown who is even like barefoot, right? So she's completely undefended, but ultimately is probably stronger than these soldiers because she's 3/3. These soldiers are probably 2/2 at most. This is a very solid card. The fact that every time you swing with it, you're going to get to give more cards in your hand lifelink, this is great. Then we've got Inquisitor Captain. 1 white and 3 gets you a 3/3 human cleric with vigilance. When it enters the battlefield, if there are 20 or more creature cards with mana value 3 or less among cards in your graveyard, hand, and library, seek 2 cards with mana value 3 or less, put one of them onto the battlefield, and shuffle the other into your library. I think the easiest way to understand this card is to know that if when you build your deck, you put at least 20 creature cards in it that have a mana value of 3 or less. That's what you need to do. When you build your deck, have mana value 3 or less for 20 or more creatures in your deck, and then you'll be able to use this Seek ability. Although theoretically, depending on what you may have conjured into existence as well, your deck could theoretically start with fewer than the requirement, and you could conjure the additional, but I'm just trying to simplify it, right? So the idea is, as long as your deck is set up the right way, you get to seek 2 creatures from your deck, put one onto the battlefield, and put the other back into your library. Not too shabby. The artwork is, I'm not even sure what's going on here. It's got like a kind of an action feel to it where it feels like the Inquisitor Captain is like breaking through a window. Is that what's going on? Did they like break down the door or break through the window and come charging in? Ha-ha! And when they do that, another soldier, the Seeking, is just like, oh, you're jumping through windows? Oh, bro, that seems like so much fun. I'm down. Let's jump through windows. Let's go! You know what I mean? That's cool. That's cool. I do like the lantern. That looks great. Moving on. We've got Kindred Denial. What a funky card. 2 blue and 2 for an instant. Counter target spell. Seek a card with the same mana value as that spell. So if you cast a spell that costs 4 and I counter it, it randomly gives me a spell that costs 4. You look at the artwork and it's just like, what? You know what I mean? Like, okay, you got a bunch of like wolves that are being chained up by magic and like flowing out of their eyes, and you got like the shaman chick up here at the top with the glowing eyes and the lines on her face. Is she a werewolf? Is that her down below with the symbol of Avacyn floating above her and her hands like encircled by this magic that, I don't know, is that supposed to be the 2 rings of magic down here are also binding these wolves? Like, this to me definitely feels like artwork that was meant to be on something else. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe a green werewolf booster or binder or something. Like, this does not feel like a blue counterspell, let's be real. But it is a cool card. Moving on. We've got Geist of Regret. 1 blue and 4 for a 4/5 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, put a random instant card from your library into your graveyard, then put a random sorcery card from your library into your graveyard. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery from your graveyard, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. So, this one's a little weird to me because it's mythic. It's 4/5. It's a 4/5 flyer for 5 mana. It's mythic. And all it does on its own is just put 2 random instants or sorceries into your graveyard. So, why is it mythic? Do you know what I mean? Like, this doesn't feel mythic level power to me. Maybe it'll prove to be more powerful, and when you have the right deck built around, wow, putting these cards in your graveyard is crazy, but ultimately, it feels kind of weak. The artwork makes him feel like a fat daddy Geist, though, doesn't it? Like, look at the size of his little hooded head, and then his big bloated body with tons of different arms coming out. It's got that sort of like sinful regret vibe to it. I like it, but I don't understand why it's mythic. Moving on, we've got Clone Crafter. This is cool. 1 blue and 1 for a 1/2. When it enters the battlefield, conjure a duplicate of a random creature card from your opponent's library into your hand. It perpetually gains. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast this spell. So you get random copies of creatures from your opponent's deck into your hand, which is so fun. The idea behind this, where the guy's essentially just randomly sneaking in and stealing like little bits of your creature's essence, and then he's using them to craft clones. Like, this guy's magic is awesome, and I love the laboratory he's got going on with the crazy glowing jar of blue glue and the crystal down there, and then above it you've got the swirling capsule that you assume will most likely contain the clone, and just the look on his face, like he is so pleased with what he's doing. I love it. Then we got Discover the Formula. 2 blue and 4 gets you an instant that seeks 3 non-land cards. Then non-land cards in your hand perpetually gain. This spell costs 1 less to cast. For 6 mana, you're essentially drawing 3 cards, but they're guaranteed to be non-land cards. And then every spell in your hand has its cost permanently reduced by 1 for the rest of the game. That is interesting. Instant speed makes it maybe playable. Playing this like in a control deck where you're waiting out and like, oh, your opponent didn't do anything at the end of their turn, doing one of these will be really gross, right? But 6 mana is a lot to ask. But if you draw another one off of it, then it's going to cost less, and it can go on like that. The artwork is pretty straightforward. You literally have a formula being discovered. You got crazy different beakers and stuff. You've got this viscous green liquid flowing through it up into this sort of drip point that gives you the feel of like a hummingbird's beak. Sorry that I have knocked the table a number of times. I know it's shaking the camera. Anyways, let us move on to the next card. That is Obsessive Collector. 1 blue and 3 gets you a 4/3 flyer with Ward 2. Whenever Obsessive Collector deals combat damage to a player, seek a card with mana value equal to the number of cards in your hand. This seems like a really strong card. 4 mana for 4/3 flying, give it ward 2, that's pretty decent. The fact that every time you swing with it, you're going to be able to seek cards, and you can control the number of cards that you have in your hand to a degree, so you may be able to somewhat influence the seeking that's going on in your deck. I mean, I know that what's going on with this artwork is that this obsessive collector has broken into this place, lifted up a glass display case, and is in the process of stealing a sphere, some kind of magical sphere. But what it actually looks like to me is the little stand below it that the sphere was resting on. That actually looks like a Magic deck to me. It gives me a deck of card vibe, and to me it's like he lifted up the box, the glowing sphere is just part of him, and he's actually manipulating a Magic deck. I am seeking a card right now. I like it. I like the fact that he's got random objects on his chains, like the scroll that's floating and stuff. This is really cool. Moving on, we've got Oglor, Devoted Assistant. Homunculus, Legendary. We don't have many of those in the game. 1 blue and 1 for a 1/1. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top 2 cards of your library, then put one of them into your graveyard. Whenever a creature card is put into your graveyard from your library or hand, it perpetually gains when this card leaves your graveyard. Create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token. So this can be used to create crazy zombie engines. Not difficult at all. This card has crazy potential, and I very much see why this one is mythic. The artwork shows Oglor, the little homunculus, and he's like, I'm coming with the magical lightning you need to infuse your zombie Stitcher creations, master. In the background, you can see there's some creation. I love it. This is great. Moving on. We've got Rimewall Protector. 2 blue and 1 gets you a 3/4 giant wizard with ward 1. When it enters the battlefield, each other giant or wizard you control and each giant or wizard card in your hand perpetually gains ward 1. The old way of doing things would just be to have this say, giants and wizards you control have ward 1. But this one does it at a static moment in time. All the creatures who are out, all the creatures in your hand benefit, but anybody else who shows up later, not so much. And I guess the idea of the ward is supposed to be represented by the fact that he will create walls of frost instantly to protect you. There's a fireball coming in, psh, ice wall, protect you. So other mages have to use a little bit more magic to force through those walls, which is some good flavor, right? The artwork shows him hands extended, creating those walls. Definitely works, good flavor. Moving on, Sinister Reflections. This one is nutty. 2 blue for an instant, conjure a duplicate of each of up to 2 target non-token creatures you control into your hand. So this doesn't go and get extra copies from your deck or anything like that. It makes 2 cards that are identical copies of the creatures and puts them straight into your hand. I love it. The artwork shows somebody being forced to look into the water. You've got a hand forcing this guy down to look into the water, and it's almost like, if you were just shoved forward, you might be trying to put your hand out to balance yourself because he doesn't want to fall off the water, or maybe he's trying to reach out and grab something in the water. But at the same time, you can see that there's this look of amazement on his face as a hand is reaching out of the water to meet his, right? That is really, really cool. Ultimately, this is another case of what feels like slush art, right? Where it's like they looked at the artwork and go, okay, we're going to make copies. What will we call it? We'll call it Sinister Reflections because it has a sinister vibe, even though that doesn't really make sense 100%. Do you know what I mean? If this is you making copies and putting them into your hand, why is this guy coming up out of the water? Yeah, it doesn't 100% tie together, but it's a very cool card. Then we've got Tireless Angler. 1 blue and 2 for a 1/4. Whenever an island enters the battlefield under your control, draft a card from Tireless Angler's spellbook. This is going to give insane amounts of card advantage. And on top of that, it's an absolutely hilarious card. You've got Captain Highliner. You've got Captain Highliner who sells fish sticks in his rockin' out stance like he's on stage shredding a guitar. But instead, he's pulling a crazy tentacle monster out of the deep while lightning flares down behind him. How is he only 1/4? How do the gods not all come down from the heavens and give him all of the blessings? This is a man living his best life. I adore it. Moving on. we're back to the beginning. We've come full circle. All right, so at this point, my friends, I will entreat you once again. The newest lore video on Fantasy Geographic is the first lore video in the Brothers War lore story. It is the full, first, sprawling, glorious Magic the Gathering story ever created. It features the beginning of Urza's life, and you definitely want to be a part of it because this storyline spans so many books, and we're going to be covering all this. And on top of that, at the end of 2022, the Brothers War set's going to be coming out. So if you want to be one of the cool kids and know what's going on, you're going to want to check out these stories. They're great. So I'm going to leave a link on the screen to the Brothers War lore. Seriously, even if you're somebody who thinks you don't like Magic lore, check it out. You might be surprised by how awesome it is. Anyways, big thank you to all of my patrons. Let me know what you think of the cards in the comments below, my friends, and I'll see you guys next time.